Welcome to this bite-sized PD. It's using frames and paths in LucidSpark to guide student learning. And you're noticing that the screen you are seeing is a LucidSpark collaboration board. So I'm actually going to zoom out. I did this on purpose because I wanted to do the presentation using the frames and paths that you're going to learn about. So I am going to get started using the paths. So the learning intention for this session is you're going to learn about frames and paths in LucidSpark so that you can design, create content and activities that can guide student learning. So think about explicit instructions or ways for you to use this for explicit instruction, opportunities for practice, assessment, or even to personalize learning. And then the success criteria, you'll know you're successful when you know how to create frames and paths in LucidSpark. And if I could recommend anything, so at the end of this bite-sized PD, go into LucidSpark and just try and explore some things out to see how this could work for you in your classroom. So here's the agenda. So I'll talk about what are frames, how to create, style, and format a frame. I'll talk about what the paths are, some ideas for implementation, and how to share with students and that Canvas connection. So I wanted to point out or remind you about this bite-sized PD we have. It was posted a few weeks ago. It's an introduction to Lucid and the Lucid Canvas integration. So during this presentation, I'm not going over the basics of how to create the collaboration board, how to add specific content like videos, links, sticky notes. That is all covered in this bite-sized PD. So please, if you haven't watched that, I recommend watching it after you watch this. It's a pretty cool program. And if you are a user of Jamboard, LucidSpark is a great alternative to Jamboard. So what are frames? So frames are used to organize content on a LucidSpark board. So you'll see how I have this set up so far. These boxes are frames, and I've been able to organize my content. So I've been organizing my content as if it was a slideshow presentation, where I can add text, I can add images, I can add video, it can be sticky notes. So you'll see where the frames are just a way to organize content. You can highlight specific content. The frames, when you utilize this feature, is how you're able to create those guided paths, which I will show you how to do that in just a moment. It also provides a table of content. So on my screen, and if you ever access a LucidSpark that utilizes frames, you'll see where there's a table of contents, and each of these frames, all the frames I have are actually different frames I have on this board. So at any time, you can always click to a specific frame that you may want to learn more about. So when you utilize frames, one, it organizes the content. Once again, you can create those paths, but then that table of contents can make a quick way for your users, your students, to actually quickly go and access the content they may be looking for or want to go back and refer to. So to create and style and format a frame, I'm going to leave this presentation in just a moment and go actually into a LucidSpark. But you can create a frame, you can actually draw it around existing content, or you can create the frame first and put content into it. I'll show you how you can adjust the title, the color, how to add objects, external links, and so forth. So I'm going to go to this one here. So you'll see this is the presentation that I'm actually teaching from at this moment. So with the frames that are already created, if at any time I want to change the color or rename it, I just have to select, and I just clicked on like the title of it. So you'll see where there's the fill color. So that's what the text is. So I can always change that to, the fill color is not the text, it's this. That doesn't look good. So I'm going to go back to white, or you can always say no color. I'm going to have white. And you'll see where it's doing the border. So I can change this to any color I want. You can even bring in your own color if you know how to get hex codes, or there's specific colors you're going to match to a specific color palette. And then, let's see, so you change the color. You'll see where I can change the text size. So you are limited. So with this specific title, I can't go to like 9-point font, 36-point font. It's just a size. I can custom, so I can change the ratio, or at any time when I'm clicking on here, The squares in the corners is what I can click and drag to adjust the size. With LucidSpark, and I always make this mistake, the circles on the side is what can be used to connect dots. So I can actually connect these dots to other frames if I want, or other objects. Sometimes I click on that by accident, so I'm just trying to resize it. So I'm telling you what mistake I always make. Squares in the corner is how I can adjust the size. The circles are how I can connect ideas and then objects. You'll see where I can always hide a frame from view. I can share. You can provide links. So I can actually link this to something outside of the LucidSpark. You can wrap content, meaning if you have a long sentence, you're going to see that the sentence tends to go in one long line initially. Wrapping or adjusting that size of the box can help. And then there's some of these magic collaborative AI, which I talk about in that bite-sized PD I referenced earlier. So I just showed you how to customize a frame that's already created, but to add a frame, on the toolbar on the left-hand side, when I hover my mouse over, notice how this black box comes up. Frame is one of the options, so it helps you remember this is the frame icon. I just click on it, select frame. This is where I can just draw my frame anywhere, and I can, those customizing tools I just showed you, I can click and move it around, and then I can add content. So if I had, and I'm making a mess of this right now, but I'll move it back, I can always move objects from one frame to another, or maybe you just did a whole collaboration with your students and you wanted to organize sticky notes into one frame. This is where I could, let me see if I can get some sticky notes in here. This is where I could actually move some sticky notes in here. And anything can be in the frame that's on my collaboration board. So just remember, these frames are a way to group content and specifics together. So you'll see over here on the side, I actually have a video from YouTube, and you're able to connect your Google Docs. I actually have a slideshow as well. So if you want to reference this LucidSpark after the fact, you can watch the bite-sized PD as well as access the presentation. So creating and adding content to a frame is pretty easy. It's just a matter of clicking and dragging the content that you want together and grouping it with the frame. Now, something that I've learned, there's a frame and there's also a container, and I wanted to show you an example of the container. So the ideas for implementation that we're going to get to in a little bit for this presentation, this is a container, and it just allows me to, I moved my frames into this one container. So it's more a way to group, it's another way to group and organize content. The difference is I can't have a container be part of the path that we're going to create in just a little bit. So the frames and the containers can both, combine information or content, but then if I want to really include it into a pathway, the frame does that, the container doesn't. So I hope that wasn't super confusing, but anyway, so that's creating and editing and styling a frame. And once again, the content can already be on there, or you can create the frame and then add content to it. So then the paths, these are used to guide your collaborators or your students through a board's content. So it can be like a virtual slide deck. It can really be a way for you to direct the learning, so it can allow students to know where to start and the logical order in which to follow. Keep in mind, though, with the path, because even though people can click through and go in the order forward and back, at any time they can click anywhere on the table of contents. And then once again, the path will be a forward and back. The table of contents can allow me to jump around. So when you're creating your path, and let me go back to this collaboration board. So you want to have your frames set up. When I go to my path, I click on that same icon I clicked to create the frame, and I click on paths. So I already have a path created, and I can say edit, just so you can see how I have this set up. So you can see the order in which I have my frames going. And what's cool is I can always click and drag and change the order. I thought I could. I should be able to. Yeah, I can click and drag and I can always change the order. So I'm going to show you if I'm creating a path from scratch. Let When I create a path, notice all my frames are showing up down here. And so all I have to do is click the order in which I want it to go. And so the order showing up here, and I can once again always click and drag and move it around. If I want anything out of my path, I just can unclick it and take it out. So that's how I can create my path and then adjust it. You might have your path, and I did this, where I had my path set up and then I added some frames and I had to adjust the order. So I'm actually going to delete path 2 because I only want one path. And then you'll see where I have my view access link. I'll talk a little bit more about sharing it with your students, but this is where when I have my path, I can actually, once again, direct the order into which people are interacting with my content. So a lot like what I'm doing right now, I've adjusted that order. So that's how you can create the path. So when I think about ideas for implementation for this, the first idea is just to organize and chunk information. So this is where you can use the frames as a way to maybe scaffold, and you want to provide information to students maybe a little bit at a time. And maybe you want there to be a video, maybe you want there to be an activity. So anything that you can have added to a collaboration board in LucidSpark, you can put into a frame. So just think about you're organizing and chunking content maybe into smaller pieces for students to digest. They use the path to interact with the content in a particular order. And then in terms of implementation, this is where you as the teacher can share that link. It can be a direct link. Like this is what I have right now. I'm in an incognito window using the direct share link I received from LucidSpark. Or, and I'll show you in a little bit how you can actually embed this right within Canvas, whether it's on a page or it's an actual Canvas assignment. Idea number 2, maybe this is where you use frames for group work and collaboration. If you were someone who utilized Jamboard, if you remember, Jamboard had multiple slides that you would have different groups work on, and sometimes that got a little confusing for students. This is where you could have, I'm going to say, you could have a collaboration board, something I have set up here, and each frame, and this board is infinite, so you could actually, right now I'm at 35%, you have an infinite amount of space. So as kids are working, they can say, here's my group, here's the frame we're going to work in, and they can add their content, their sticky notes there. So thinking about this idea, frames are set up to create spaces for a specific group of students to work with. And then you as the teacher, you could actually utilize paths in 2 ways. And maybe you don't use paths in this situation. Or you can say, okay, I have group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4. I'm going to use the paths. So after the groups have worked together and collaborated, we can then use the paths to go see what group 1 did, group 2 did. So all the kids can see all of the students' work. Or maybe you have a group working on, here's a brainstorm activity, then you're going to move into some actual work. The frames or the paths can be used to help groups go from one activity to the next within the collaboration activity. I hope that made sense. But the purpose of me sharing ideas really is just to get you thinking about things that you do in your class and how this could support the learning that you are hoping for and the activities you want kids to do. And this should say interactive storyboarding. So idea number 3, an interactive storyboard where each frame, and then this is where kids are working collaboratively or independently, each frame represents a scene or chapter of a story. The path can guide students through a nonlinear narrative and even choose your own adventure format. And then students can collaboratively build storyboards, plot diagrams, comic strips, or paths to follow the story sequence. So that's an idea. Another idea is an inquiry-based or problem-based learning organizer. So frames could be used for each step of the inquiry cycle. If you ask, investigate, create, discuss, reflect. The path can be designed to guide students through each step of the process. And then students can work in groups. They can collaborate with one another. I'm actually recognizing all the spelling mistakes I have on here that I'm going to go back and fix. But anyway, so I hope you're seeing that it can be a way to provide these concepts in specific groups and then guiding students through the process. And then the last example I'm just going to share quickly is a virtual gallery walk where maybe each frame is a station or poster on a specific topic, or maybe if you're learning about historical figures, maybe students are assigned a specific frame or about a specific individual. Students work within those frames, and then the path can be used to guide students to review and see what other people have worked on and created. The cool thing about using this collaboration board, as students are walking through this digital gallery, they can add sticky notes, they can have emoji reactions, or they can add comments to each frame. So as I'm going through and seeing what other students have created, I can actually give it a thumbs up or a heart, maybe I'm liking what I'm seeing. I can leave comments. There was a tag. There is a comment. I can add a comment. So depending on how much access you want to give students, you can decide if they're going through the pathway, you want them to provide reactions, to provide comments to each other's work. So that's just an idea. And I'm going to scroll out just so you can see. So these are just 5 different ideas that you could do or think or just consider as you're thinking of ways to use frames and paths within LucidSpark, or even just the possibilities of what they can do. So then when it comes to sharing with students, there is a way to share a link directly from the Lucid app, or you can also use the Canvas integration. So within Lucid, you'll see in the upper corner, there's share. And then this is where what I did and how I'm using it right now for this presentation is I just said anyone with the link. I didn't make it so they had to log in. Anyone with the link can view. I didn't want people to comment or edit. In this case, I just want you to be able to view it. And then once I get that link, this is the link that I can provide for users to use. So you can see where, and with Lucid, if you have your students log in and access it directly, you can give specific groups or students access to the Lucid project. But once again, you want to really think about the purpose of the Lucid that you're creating and what you're going to want students to do in terms of collaboration and sharing and creation. When it comes to Canvas, so this is where you can, I'm going to go into modules, you can set it up where it's a Lucid assignment. So maybe you actually have the students create something. I have this opening in a different window. You can always uncheck that box so it appears right on the main screen. But this is where students go to Lucid, and I can have specific directions on what I want them to do. It's coming. So you'll see it's populating this Lucid assignment. So when the students log into Canvas, there'll be an option for them to submit it. And because I'm not logged in as a student in Canvas, I don't have the submit option. But this is just a preview of what it would look like. And then when a student submits it to the teacher in SpeedGrader, the teacher can see a PDF version of what they created. So that's the Lucid assignment, or you can just embed on like a page within Canvas, and they could have students. And that the way you're embedding it and when you're adding it, you can make it so it's view only, you can make it where it's editable, but this is where you as the teacher can just make it available to your students. So it will populate, it's just taking a second, but it'll populate the same idea for students to interact with and explore. So it's really thinking about what's the purpose of this Lucid collaboration experience you want for students. Is it independent work? Is it something you want them to collaborate on? Is it something they're just adding to? Do you want them to review and provide reactions? And as always, as the teacher, you want to make sure when you're having students interact with the collaboration board that you are aware of what they're adding and you're watching to see what's being added and contributed to that collaboration board. So this idea is for how you can share that information with students, whether a direct link or you could use that Canvas integration. I always like Canvas, especially because I'm a teacher who uses Canvas. It's an easy way for me to direct students exactly where to go with directions right there for them to see. And then I'm also being transparent with parents of how I'm using this in my classroom. And so as always, thank you for watching this bite-sized PD. Here is the link to our bite-sized PD page, especially if you want to go back and access that previous bite-sized PD on Lucid. And then if you want the relicensure credit, here is the form that you can click on to get that relicensure credit. And if you want to learn more about Lucid, or you want, you could benefit from meeting with someone one-on-one to do more of this, or even talk through the possibilities of how you could use this within your classroom with your students, I am always a great resource and happy to come meet with anybody. My name is Camille Cole, and my email is camille.cole@canyonsdistrict.org.